Hey, good morning, this is PW, and we're going to do some quick work with mixing two channels of audio that have been recorded on the Panasonic cameras. So first we want to make sure that we open up Final Cut Pro. While that's loading, I'm going to go ahead and log into the server, click on Finder, I'm going to go up to Go, I'm going to say Connect to Server. If you don't already have it saved, you're going to hit Browse. Okay, so now we have our network. We can scroll down, we can find our GHS Studio Room 608. I'm going to choose that, double click on it, and it's going to tell you that the connection failed, and that's because your name is incorrect right now. See here, it says connection failed. So we need to hit Connect As, and it says your name is period 1 Studio 12. Well, that user does not have permission on the server. So we need to change this to GHS Studio. First four letters are capital. Our password is B-roll, B-R-O-L-L. And if you want to, you can remember the password in your keychain. We're going to go ahead and connect. And now it's giving me access to our B-roll folder, our B-roll for Archivist, our GHS Studio Samples, our turn-in, and our licensed music. So I'm going to go to the Studio Samples, and I'm going to find the Panasonic 2-channel audio blending activity and the original media. And in here, your first one you can see is Anastasia walking out of the classroom door. And in here, there's Mr. Hart. And we've got some other files in here. Here's the video with Duncan. So we don't want to play these off the server because they're huge. But we want to go ahead and make sure that they're the correct ones. And then you can copy this over to your computer. So just drag that entire thing over to your computer desktop. First, we're going to go ahead and hide any other projects that are up in Final Cut and any other libraries. So here we have an event. We have inside it a bunch of clips and some audio, and then we have some projects up here at the top, and these projects are our timelines. You'll notice this one here is called Untitled Project, and in our timeline it's Untitled Project. If I double click on the Student Thoughts PW edit, that's going to come up and it'll say right here in the middle, Student Thoughts PW Edit for dual mono. And we want to make sure that we don't mix up our projects and be editing in one when we think we're really in the other, because that can cause some difficulties later on. But we're going to go ahead and close this library. That will close everything. So we're going to right click on our library and we're going to say Close Library Interview at Lunch. That just hides it. It's still in the Movies folder. If we open up our hard drive and click on Movies, you can see that we have Interview at Lunch right here. We also have Interview at Lunch 2, Interview with Darius and Colby, and a demo for blending. So all of those things are here in the Movies folder. We can get to them fairly easily. Okay, so we're going to create a new library. We're going to go File, New Library. And notice here they accidentally set it to Desktop. So I want to make sure that this is set to Movies because it really needs to be saved inside the Movies folder. I'm going to go ahead and call this PW's demo for dual channel audio mixing. And I'll go ahead and hit save. Now we have our event, and our event here is 9/17/18, and I want to change that as well. I'm going to rename that Panasonic 2-channel audio. That way it's really clear what this particular event is. I can go ahead and import my media. We are going to go ahead and import our media. And it brings up our import media window, or media import. I'm going to click on the desktop where I copied the footage. I'm going to hop out of the downloads folder. Back here on my favorites, desktop. And now I have original media. I also have Student Thoughts original media. And this one here, if you look, you'll notice that it starts off in the classroom and then goes to the student union. And then there's the interview with Duncan and some other folks. Okay.
What do you think about
Okay, you'll notice that we're adding this media to the existing event Panasonic 2-channel audio. We are copying the footage to the library. That's really important. That makes sure that Final Cut holds all of your content, and if we need to move you to a different computer, we can. And then we're going to go ahead and select all of these, so we can click on the first one, roll down to the bottom. I'll even take their music, and I'm going to go ahead and click once on there, and then I'm going to say import all. And I shift clicked on the bottom there so that it would take everything in between. And now I have this clip here that's an edit that I did earlier. I'm going to go ahead and just take that guy out. And so here we have the song that they chose. Very bassy. And then I have interviews. And these interviews, if we look over here in our inspector, you can see that there's channel 1 and there's a channel 2. If you don't see this panel, you want to make sure to come up here and click on your 3 lines with the 3 dots. They look like sliders, and we're going to go ahead and click on that, and that opens up our information panel or inspector. We can look at the movie components, we can look at audio components, we can look at information about the clips, and then we can also look at how it's being shared and any metadata that we have in it. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back over to audio because that's where we want to be. And what we're going to be using today is pan. And this is really important so that we can shift the audio from one side to another. So now I need a project to work in. So I'm going to go ahead and click on New Project. I'm going to go ahead and come up here and I'm going to call this PW's Demo for 2-Channel Audio. It's being saved in my event, Panasonic 2-Channel Audio. And now, if I find an interview that I like, oh, here's one with a teacher.
Would be appropriate for school. If there was one thing about the dress code.
Now this one's pretty quiet in the background.
I think it's important for students to be able to express themselves. What do you think about the dress code?
Now, just a side note, one thing that's happening here is their camera person is not ready and in position before the interview starts. And so that's not necessarily the camera person's fault, that's also the interviewer's fault. They want to make sure that the camera is steady, looking at them, ready to go, and they can even confirm, are you ready? And so if you look here, she starts asking the question before the camera is even in position.
What do you think about the dress code? I think it's important for students to be able to express themselves freely.
Now we're going to have her asking the question later on, so I don't necessarily need that part. So I'm going to start when the camera's a little more stable and just start with his answer.
I think it's important for students to be able to express themselves freely, but also be appropriate for school.
And that's a pretty good answer right there. I think I'm going to stop there. Now you can drag your sliders back and forth, or you can hit the O key where you want the out point to be. You can also hit the I where you want the in point to be, and that will set your range. And then you can hit F to favorite it, and that's going to give you the green bar across the top where it's favorited. I can drag that down into my timeline. I can zoom in on it a little bit as well with Command plus. Some of those are also right here in our toolbar. I could switch over to the zoom tool and I can click in my timeline. I can hold Option and click to zoom back out. But I just like the hotkeys on the keyboard a little bit for that. So let me go back over to our select tool. Here we have this, and now I want to find one that's got really noisy audio, and most of the ones in the student union do. So here's one.
What's one thing you would change with this gun?
Okay, and that's a pretty good start there. So I'm going to go with our second question because the camera's nice and stable. There we go. We'll get rid of her I'm going to hit I for my endpoint.
What's one thing you would change with this gun? That girls can't show shoulders. It's like yeah, thank you.
Okay, now we don't necessarily need her leaving. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and hit O for the out point here, and then F for favorite, and that favorites that piece, and I'll drag that down. Okay, now obviously I want you to do that with more of these so that you get some more practice with favoriting, but I have two down here that are distinctly different in their background sounds. So here in the hallway,
to express himself.
I can switch our mode for panning over from none to stereo left right. And then if I shift it to the left, it's going to shift it over to audio channel 1. If I shift it to the right, it's going to shift it to audio dialogue 2. And you can see that this one here is already a lot higher than this one. So I'm going to go ahead and play this, and while I'm playing it, I'm going to shift these levels.
I think it's important for students to be able to express themselves freely, but also be appropriate for school.
Okay.
I think it's important for students to be able to...
Whoa. Okay, that's an issue. I was highlighted on the wrong clip when I was doing that, so if I look here, we can see that this clip here is shifted all the way to the right, and that's what I had intended to do with the first one. So I'm going to set that back to 0. And I'm going to make sure that I'm on the correct clip. We want to have that selected in our timeline. Now I'm going to switch that mode to left and right, and as I play this, I'm going to go ahead and
I think it's important for students to be able
there's
to
all background
express
sound,
themselves freely, but also be appropriate.
and there's all microphone. So if we listen to the all microphone again,
I think it's important for students to be able to express themselves freely, but also be appropriate for school.
there's no background noise whatsoever. So I'm going to put some background noise in there so that it actually sounds like they're out and about and not in the studio doing a voiceover.
I think it's important for students to be able to express themselves freely, but also be appropriate for school.
Okay, and there's a little bit of background sound.
I think it's important for students to be able to express themselves freely, but also be appropriate for school.
But you can't really understand it. So I'm going to round that up to 80, just because I like to keep mine at 5 point intervals.
For students to be able to express themselves freely, but...
And then here's this one, and because I'd had it selected earlier, I've already set the mode to stereo left right from none. And as we play that...
What's one thing you would change about the dress code?
That girls can't show shoulders, because, like, it's shoulders.
Now, in order to get about the same amount of background noise in that situation, I need to bring it way up into the 90s.
What's one thing you would change about the dress code?
That girls can't show shoulders.
Okay, and I think 90 is going to sound pretty good there.
What's one thing you would change about the dress code?
That girls can't show shoulders.
Now, if you're listening with headphones right now, you'll notice that the microphone is completely on the right-hand side of your headphones, and the background audio is completely on the left-hand side. So if we played that in a classroom, it would sound really weird. You'd just sound like you're listening to two totally different things. So we do need to blend those eventually, and we'll be doing that at the end.
Cause, like,
Now, one thing that I haven't checked at all yet are the audio levels. And right here we have our mini meters so that as I'm playing, we can kind of see that there's audio. And if it's really distorting, I can see that it turns yellow and red, but right now it's just kind of sitting in the green. So you don't have a lot of specifics. So I'm going to click on it once to bring up our major meters right here. These are the audio level meters. And you'll notice that 0 is where we want to be peaking. So as they talk, we want that level to come up to 0 and come back down. We don't want it to go up to 6. We don't want it to hang out down here at -6 to -12. We want it to be peaking at 0. On the cameras and on the H4n audios, we always record at -6 decibels. That gives us some range and some settings. On Final Cut, we're going to peak at 0. For dialogue.
I think it's important for students to be able to express themselves freely, but all...
Now here, they're peaking, when he's talking, they're peaking just under 12 decibels. So I know that I can bring that up a full 12 decibels to bring that up to 0. So I'm going to start here, and you'll notice that this starts at 0, and that's not, has absolutely nothing to do with our meters right now. This is where the clip audio adjustment starts. So we have a 12 decibel range up and down when we're adjusting audio. So I can adjust up 12, I can come down 12, and I can continue to come down, and that's just silencing everything. When I get to negative infinity, then it's completely silent and turned off. But notice that we only have a 12 decibel range going up. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that all the way up to 12, and we'll see what that looks like.
It's important for students to be able to express themselves freely, but also be appropriate for school. It's important for students to be able to express themselves freely, but also be appropriate for school.
Now combined, that's only coming up to -6-ish. So I need to push that a little bit further. So I'm going to do one hack on this. I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say new compound clip. I'm going to name this audio boost for teacher. And now my clip is actually named audio boost for teacher here. And it's also up here as one of the clips that I've created. Now, when I look at this clip, I start back at 0 because that's where that clip's audio range starts. So I can bring this up another 6 decibels. And now when we play it, hopefully I'm going to be peaking closer to 0.
I think it's important for students to be able to express themselves freely, but also be appropriate for school. For students to be able to express themselves freely, but also be appropriate.
Now I think I could probably come up about another 2 decibels on that. If it's difficult for you to slide this when you're using a mouse, if you come over here to the timeline settings, you can click on that and you can slide this height bar up to give you more range. And now I can actually, it increases the scale. So now as I slide, I'm going to see more individual numbers as I go, and it's a little bit easier to slide. So there I'm at 8, and if we play this,
it's important for students to be able to express themselves freely, but also be appropriate for school.
okay, so now that's coming up to 0. There is one peak over here when he first starts, and people typically do this when they start their sentences. They'll start a little loud.
I think it's important for students.
So he's coming up an extra 6 decibels in this very, very beginning part. So if I zoom in on that and slide over, you can see that right here we're coming up into the red. Now, I can click off of it and I can use my range selection tool, come into the middle of the video clip, and I can drag across it. And then I can adjust the audio in only that section. So now I'm going to bring it down to 3. So that's going to reduce it by 5. And now if I play that,
I think it's important for students.
we're still coming up 1 decibel high. So I'm going to come down 1 more. And that did not do what I wanted. We're at 8. I'm going to come down to 2. 2 should reduce it by 6.
I think it's important for students to be able to express themselves freely, but also be appropriate for school.
There we go. Now we can see that with that entire clip, the most that it went was 0. And this will usually hold as you play a clip and have it selected. When you play,
I think it's important for students.
If it goes into the red or peaks at 0, it's going to show that to you. And then eventually you can monitor that way as it goes. Now here I'm going to listen to these folks again.
What's one thing you would change with?
And we don't really need
What's
the laughter here, so I'm going to go ahead and adjust the length of this clip, trim it in just a little tighter.
What's one thing you would change with the dress code?
That girls can't show shoulders.
Okay, so again, she's down here about -12, so I'm going to go ahead and boost this some.
What's one thing you would change with the dress code?
That girls can't show shoulders.
Okay, so Anastasia's obviously coming up to 7. Here, she's peaking a little high too, but let's see where.
That girls can't show shoulders.
Okay, so she's coming up to 2 in this very first part of her sentence, but the bulk of hers is still low.
girls can't show shoulders.
It's only coming up to about -5 or -4 decibels. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of this. I'm going to make a new compound clip, and I'm going to call it Audio Boost for Student 1. And now I can boost this up a little bit more. So I'm going to come up another 5 or 4.
That girls can't show shoulders.
Okay, so let's check.
Girls can't show shoulders. Girls can't show shoulders.
Okay, so there she's only coming up to -1. So I'm going to boost it one more. I'm going to come up to 5.
Girls can't show shoulders because like it's shoulders.
Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and use my range tool, and I'm going to bring Anastasia down. And I think Anastasia was peaking about 7, so I'm going to bring her down to about -2.
What's one thing you would change about the dress? What's one thing
Oh,
you change?
she's still coming up too high. But these mountain peaks here are looking pretty good, so I'm going to actually shorten my range tool now, and I'm going to just do this section.
What's one thing you would change about the dress code?
That girls can't.
Okay, and then we've got this peak here where she's a little loud. And I could include that part. So let's bring that down by about 2 decibels. So I'm going to come down to 3. This is where your 4th grade math comes in handy.
That girls can't.
No, she's still peaking up high.
That girls can't show shoulders because like it's shoulders.
Okay, now we've got this where Anastasia's actually pulling the mic away from her, and so I'm going to fix that a little bit. Because here, as she's pulling it away, I can use the range tool.
Because like it's shoulders. Because like it's shoulders.
There we go. So there's still a little bit of a dip, which people would expect when the mic gets pulled away, but we can still hear her clearly.
Shoulders. Because like it's shoulders.
There we go.
Because like.
Now we've got our audio levels at the right spot where we want them, and we have the blend between channel 1 and channel 2 fixed nicely on these clips. I would do that for all of my different clips so that my segment is ready. And then I would go ahead and highlight all of mine.
For students to be able to express themselves freely, but also be.
Okay. So notice that I can go into those compound clips, and each time I go in, it's going to show me where I'm at. So right now I'm in PW's demo for 2-channel audio. If I double click on this clip called Audio Boost for Teacher, now I'm inside the Audio Boost for Teacher clip, and I'm able to get back to looking at the audio.
To be able to.
And it's really important to make sure that you're not doing anything other than audio adjustments for now inside a compound clip. If I adjust this video, if I get rid of part of his answer and I go back, now you'll notice that we have his clip play and it just goes black because the clip length is still that long because of the compound clip, but I've shortened the video inside it. And so we would then have to, on each level, keep coming up and do more adjustments. So it's really important to make sure that you're only adjusting audio for now. Okay, so now we need to actually export this out of the project and bring it back in so that Final Cut sees it as a new clip. As a compound clip, because we can go inside it, Final Cut still sees its audio as set up the way that we've set it up. So we need to kind of trick it. So we're going to highlight both these. Actually, we can just highlight our project. And this is PW's demo for 2-channel audio. And I'm going to go File, share master file. Now you can do it in menus if you want, but you can also come up here to the fast button in the upper right corner and you can click on that share button. Share master file. Now here you can see that my file is 120 megabytes and that's only for these two little clips. If I go into settings, that's because we're set to H.264. Now our resolution is ultra high def. This is 4K footage right here. 3840 by 2160 is 4K footage. So they did not use the 1920 by 1080 card. It's not a big deal because we'll just adjust that later on. But if they kept it as source material, it keeps it in that 4K resolution photo format with Apple ProRes as the codec. If I choose that, now we're a gig. So the difference between source and H.264 is huge. So when we're sending material back and forth to the server, we want to make sure that we're setting it the codec at H.264. So I'm going to go ahead and go next. Now this I can put on my desktop. So I'm going to go ahead and call this PW's demo for 2-channel. And I'm going to put ready for dual mono, because dual mono is what we're going to be doing to this. So now I can go ahead and let that share out. If we look at our background tasks here, you can see that it's sharing. Everything is idle except for this. When that's idle, it's going to open automatically. But it will let me still work. So I'm going to go ahead and go File, New Project. And I'm going to go ahead and here's the video file that I made. I can close that. And it beat me to it. So I'm going to go File, New Project. And we'll call this segment with dual mono audio, because that's what it's going to be. So now I have this project segment with dual mono audio. I can see that I'm inside it by looking at the center of my timeline, and I can go ahead and re-import in the media that we had. So I'm going to go to the desktop and I can go to PW's demo for 2-channel, ready for dual mono. I'm importing it into the Panasonic 2-channel audio event. I'm copying it to the library and I'm going to import selected. Now I have PW's audio for PW's demo for 2-channel ready for dual mono. So I can drag this down.
I think it's important for students.
That.
And here's basically my finished segment except for some final audio. Now I can't double click on this like I can the compound clips and do more audio adjustments. So you have to make sure that all of your audio adjustments for your entire segment are done before you share it out and get it ready for dual mono. But you want to make sure to do this step, because if you turn this into the lead editor,
Express himself freely, but also be.
They're going to have a major issue with your audio because it's going to sound totally sideways. So now we're going to go ahead and change the mode. We can keep that at none. But in the audio configuration, so here we're going to change the audio configuration. We want to make sure that our piece is selected. And in the audio configuration, we're going to change from stereo to dual mono. And this copies the audio that's being played on each side, duplicates it, and puts it on the other side as well. So I'm going to go ahead and go dual mono. And now when we play this,
To be able to express himself freely, but also be appropriate for school.
What's one thing you would change about the dress code?
That girls can't show shoulders, because like it's shoulders.
okay, now we can hear it on both sides, but it's blended the higher level of the microphone and the lower level of the background noise, and it's kind of compromised here at -6. So I need to take my level here and bring it up 6 decibels. 5, and let's get it on 6. There we go. And now if I play this, we should be peaking at 0.
I think it's important for students to be able to express themselves freely, but also be appropriate for school.
What's one thing you would change about the dress code?
That girls can't show shoulders, because, like, it's shoulders.
Okay, so overall, all of that was playing at 0, except there was one spot back here that hit 1.
I think it's important for students.
And it's his very first part again. So I'm going to use the, let's just see if any of his other parts do.
For students to be able to express themselves freely.
Actually, it's most of his section now is peaking
Also be appropriate for school.
1 higher. So let's take this beginning part. I'm going to use my range tool.
I think it's important for students to be able to express.
And we'll come to about here.
I think it's important for students to be able to
Because here,
express themselves freely, but
he's only coming up to 0. So in this part here, I'm just going to bring him down 1 decibel. Come down to 5.
I think it's important for students to be able to express themselves freely, but also be appropriate for school.
What's one thing you would change about the dress code?
Express.
There we go. So now all of our audio is peaking at the correct location. It's peaking at 0.
Because, like, it's shoulders.
And we're done. So now I'd be able to share this out as a master file. I would call it, double check my settings, make sure I'm H264, go next. And I'm going to call this PW's, actually I'm just going to call it Student Thoughts PW's version. And I'm just going to put DM, dual mono, afterwards so that I know that I'm giving the right file to the editor. And I'm going to save that. It's going to share it out. And when my segment is finished, I can put it on a USB stick and bring that to the editor. And that's these guys right over here. So we're going to have this new file made, and it's PW's version DM for dual mono. Now, it's really important to make sure you saw it here as a queue for a moment. That's the container being created, the file, and then the video gets poured into it. So until this video pops up on your screen and you can actually play it,
Girls can't show.
do not copy it to a USB stick, because you'll only be copying the container, not the contents inside. So now we could put this on a USB stick and safely eject that stick and not have any issues at all. Okay, that's it. So enjoy.
I think